Hey everyone. Sit back and stuff. And then as people land, just something in. No. Okay. And then yeah, just admit them. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us both in person and virtually on Facebook and on Zoom. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Jared Shablin, and I am the chair of the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. We have a fantastic event coming up today with so many of our endorsed candidates running for office. Before we get into the speakers, I want to remind you all two major things. Number one, the primary is going to be on July 19th in person. Early voting starts July 7th through the 14th. Early voting in Wacomico County is at the Civic Center. Where is early voting in Worcester County?
Worcester Prep.
Worcester Prep. And
they moved it, so if anybody's thinking else right now, they moved it to Worcester Prep.
You can also vote by mail by going to the Mail-in Board of Elections website and requesting a mail-in ballot. My best practice for that is to fill out your ballot and bring it to one of the many mail-in ballot boxes that will be around each of your counties. We'll be providing more information when the Board of Elections finalizes that detail here in the next couple of weeks. To go ahead and get started, I want to introduce a representative for our endorsed candidate for Congress. Unfortunately, Heather Mazier could not be here today. She has a very big district, actually the largest district east of the Mississippi. That's correct. District 1 is the largest congressional district by landmass east of the Mississippi. So I want to go ahead and introduce my dear friend, Spencer Dixon, who's going to be representing the campaign and talking about why Heather is the progressive champion we need. Spencer?
Thank you, Jared. Thank you. Heather so appreciates the support of the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. As Jared said, Heather would be here today, but she is currently racing between two events. The Chestertown Tea Party Festival, which celebrates the Tea Party of the 1700s, not the movement of 10 years ago, thankfully. And then she's headed to Caroline County Pride in Denton. So I'm very happy and honored to be able to represent the campaign today. My name is Spencer Dixon, and I'm the Deputy Campaign Manager for Heather's campaign. First, I just want to acknowledge many of the endorsers of Heather who are part of the program today. Councilwoman Michelle Gregory, Councilman Todd Knock, and Secretary King are all supporting Heather, and we're very honored to have their support. I know I don't have a lot of time, so I just want to tell you a brief story. I grew up in Severna Park in Anne Arundel County, and I got my start in politics volunteering for the Democrats the last time, but not the first time, but not the last time that Andy Harris lost a bid for Congress back in 2008. At the time, my parents had both lost their jobs as part of the real estate bubble bursting right at the same time that my mom was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a chronic illness that she still deals with now. This was also while we were muddling through having COBRA coverage and dealing with the skimpy and hassle that is, especially before the time of the Affordable Care Act. So in between knocking hundreds of doors, asking people to vote for Democrats, even when I couldn't vote yet myself, there was a debate between Andy Harris and the Democratic nominee back in 2008 that I attended. After the debate, I went up to Andy Harris and asked, as a doctor, what will you do to ensure that my family and families like mine have access to affordable health care? In so many words, he basically said, it's not my problem, to a 16-year-old kid. Now, that's probably not surprising to many of you in the room here. That's par for the course for Andy Harris. But I tell this story because there are thousands of people like mine and thousands of families like mine, independents, Republicans, and Democrats, who all know that Andy Harris is ineffective, divisive, and completely absent from showing up and delivering for our district. What better contrast do we have to run for Congress than Heather Mazier. Someone who has a track record of bringing people together to deliver results. Someone who sat down and did her homework, met with and listened to dozens of people around the district and wrote a 33-page economic plan catered to the first district that you can read on our website. Someone who is already taking the action and delivering like a congresswoman. Particularly, she was instrumental in delivering the funding that is needed to move the old Cambridge Hospital on the Choptank River and finally redeveloping that project for some affordable housing and making that a useful space, something that hasn't been for far too many years. And by the way, that's a project that Andy Harris inexplicably stood in the way of, not just doing nothing, but actually stood in the way of making progress on. But on the other hand, you've got Heather, someone who's already stepping in, making calls to the governor, making connections, and actually moving that process along. That is the indication of the kind of leadership that she's going to bring to this district, bringing people together across the ideological spectrum to deliver results. This campaign is on fire. We have volunteers and supporters all over the district, knocking on doors, gathering support, and we're the only campaign running for Congress with the ability and the resources to build that coalition that's needed to finally end the Andy Harris embarrassment. So thank you again for the support from the Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. Thank you for having me. And together we're going to finally get this job done. Thank you so much.
Just to add on that, I know Heather isn't here today, but Heather has been someone who's shown up. She has supported numerous LSPC initiatives. She's someone that you could ask Michelle, Todd, pretty much every candidate on the ballot. I mean, she's someone who shows up and understands as someone who's at the top of the ticket, she needs to deliver. So thank you, Spencer, for representing. The next speaker that we have is going to be Representative for Delegate Brooke Learman, who is running for comptroller. Nicole Hollywood.
Wow.
I'm Nicole Hollywood. I'm president of Salisbury PFLAG. I'm a deputy chapter lead of Moms Demand Action for the state of Maryland. And I'm here today to surrogate for the Learman campaign. So we've been longtime friends of Delegate Learman. I don't know how much everyone's followed her, but she's a mom, a civil rights attorney. She's from Baltimore. And she's been a delegate for several sessions now. And before that, she was elected in the city of Baltimore. Delegate Learman has a long and illustrious record when it comes to the environment, and she is absolutely going to be a climate champion. If you look at some of the legislation she's sponsored in recent years, she's really made a lot of forward movement in terms of climate resilience. And so some of her things she's going to ensure as controller, everyone knows what controller is, correct? I've been text banking for her, and a lot of it is what is a controller, but it's basically the chief financial officer for the state of Maryland. So in that role, she's going to ensure the climate resistance of our taxpayer dollars so that our money is not supporting polluters and climate offenders. She's going to initiate Maryland's first climate resilience officer, which will be a dedicated position in the Office of Controller. She's going to dedicate state procurement to being environmentally sustainable. She's going to increase environmental accountability and transparency, and which is big for us, support offshore wind. Because we all know that actually is something that we need, and it's something that's excellent for the economic development of the Eastern Shore. In addition to her being a climate champion, she has been the champion in the General Assembly for rural broadband expansion. So a lot of people have heard of the piece of legislation that passed this year, the rural broadband bill. That was her bill. She knows how stifling it is to the people of the Eastern Shore. I teach at UMES. I know what an issue it is here in Somerset County, that it hurts economic development, business development, it hurts students. The pandemic really, shone a terrible light on the, digital inequities in this area. So that's another major pillar of her campaign. If you see my shirt, in 390 years, we've elected one woman to statewide office. So we really like to see more of that. So Brooke might be our second, and we have more, hopefully, that we'll see go through. And finally, I mentioned that I'm Deputy Chapter Lead Momstand Action Maryland, and we are huge fans of Delegate Learman. And so if you've been getting text messages from the campaign, it's probably from us. So she's been a huge gun sense champion and proponent of common sense gun safety legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And Brooke has also been someone who has been a big supporter of the LSPC through several events with us, and we're looking to have her down in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, she did have some other events today. Our next speaker is here today. Most people probably already know him because he's one of the longest serving LSPC members, one of our first ever elected officials, a Kokomo council member, and the next state delegate for District 38A, my dear friend, Todd Knopf.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so we're going to talk. If we're going to win and you know it, clap your hands. If we're going to win and you know it, clap your hands. If we're going to win and you know it, and we really need to show it. If we're going to win and you know it, clap your hands. So listen, that's a command that I do in my classroom when I want to gather my students' attention. So I just wanted to gather your attention real fast to say thank you guys for coming out, number one. Number two, this is our year. We are going to do this. This is the most appropriate time for us to get in these races and actually win. And we can make the Eastern Shore blue. That's what it's about. For too long, we have sat back and we watched policies like Sunday hunting go forth. And we watched policies that really don't help the people of the Eastern Shore. We've watched towns like Princess Anne and Pocomoke and Snow Hill and Berlin. We've watched towns like that struggle just to make it. We watched towns, I've sat in budget meetings and I've seen where we've had to make the hard decisions of getting rid of recreation departments in our towns and our municipalities and allocating money for over here and cutting back funding on our police departments and cutting back funding on our EMS departments. And we've been asking the state to step in for years. We've been asking our elected officials that represent this Eastern Shore to step in for years. But you all know, just as I know, that we do not understand the sting. We never understand the severity until a situation or issue is knocking at our front door. You all are my neighbors. We live in the same neighborhood. These issues are at all of our front doors. And it is up to us to make our voices heard. It is up to us to change it. Being an 11th and 12th grade Amish English teacher, it broke my heart to see what happened in Texas. We have people representing us that are saying, oh, well, you know, he was mentally ill. That doesn't answer the question. That doesn't bring back those lives. Working in education, I've seen so many different things. I've seen the warning signs. I've seen who doesn't need to have access to a gun. I've seen it. But when is the state going to wake up and see it? It is time for us to let our feet and let our vote do the talk. It is time for us to make a change. It is time for us to be effective. No more going along to get along and being the lower, slower shore. There's nothing slow about it. There's nothing slow about y'all. Even if we're moving a little backwards today. But even if we're moving a little slow, there's nothing slow about us. We are the growing and showing Eastern Shore of Maryland, and we are going to get to Annapolis and beyond. We are Eastern Shore, here at SCORE. Thank you guys for coming out. Hope you have a great day.
Definitely need to elect him delegate, right? Our next speaker is a representative campaign volunteer for Katie Curry O'Malley, who's running for Attorney General, Michelle Johnson. We can talk to Michelle.
Clapping for me. I don't know how I followed Todd Knott, but anyway, I'm going to do my best, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. I live in Talbot County, and I'm excited to be here on behalf of Katie Curran O'Malley, your endorsed candidate for Attorney General. The position of Attorney General, as I think we will all agree, has never been more important than it is today. Our current Attorney General and his team of 400+ attorneys are fighting for us every day on issues that we all care about, like criminal justice, public safety, consumer protection, and the environment. He is retiring, Brian Frosch, and there's a contested Democratic primary. So Katie needs your vote, not only in November, she needs your vote in July in order to get to November. Were any of you in attendance at the recent Attorney General Forum in Salisbury at the university? No. There were 2 Democratic candidates, one of which was Katie, and 2 Republican candidates. And Katie stands alone with both experience and values that we need in our top law enforcement officer. Katie's the only Attorney General candidate with 30 years of experience working in Maryland's legal system, 10 years as an assistant attorney general or assistant state's attorney, and 20 years as a district court judge. With her courtroom experience, Katie is the only candidate who knows how our laws affect real people, which is a very important trait for an attorney general to have. And I also happen to know that Katie has the temperament for the job as well. Folks, I never planned to get involved in the attorney general race this year. I mean, there's so many offices up for grab, and it was the last thing in the world that I planned to do. I was asked by a friend to meet with representatives from this campaign, the O'Malley campaign, as they were driving through Easton, and I agreed to host Katie for a full day the following week. You really get to know someone when you spend 8.5 hours with them. And I learned that not only is Katie very qualified to be our next Attorney General, she's also a wonderful human being who cares about people and a great communicator. She's a lifetime Marylander, and she grew up enjoying the Chesapeake Bay and loving the Eastern Shore. And as a candidate, she has spent a lot of time on the Eastern Shore. And we all know there's some candidates we never see. They never come up, they never come across the bridge. But Katie has been here, and she's actually coming back this Friday. She'll be back on the Eastern Shore this Friday. As Attorney General, she will fight to make the air clean, the land clean, the water clean, and energy clean, which is the environmental legacy that we all want to leave for whoever comes after us. Katie will use the office of Attorney General to protect all Maryland families from crime and to fight for criminal justice reform so that everyone can get justice under the law. And she will never waver from protecting our rights as Marylanders, including a woman's right to choose and our right to vote. As the previous speaker said, Maryland has never had a female governor, attorney general, or comptroller. And Katie would be Maryland's first female attorney general. I thank you for endorsing Katie and ask for your support both in the primary and the general election. Thank you very much.
I have to agree. Katie has been on the show a lot. Her husband, former Governor Martin O'Malley, her son William, who I went to school with, they call me about 9 times a day, which I mean that as a good thing. They're really passionate about the issues on the Eastern Shore and making sure folks know out here that Katie's willing to fight for us on the Eastern Shore. Whereas my mom knows the former Governor Jared's friend, Martin. So our next speaker is a dear friend, someone who used to be the board president of Planned Parenthood, which is really important around these days, and is now the executive director of the Women's Law Center of Maryland and the next lieutenant governor of the state of Maryland, Michelle Siri.
Ted, thank you everybody for being here. I'm so very pleased to be endorsed, to have our ticket be endorsed, and just to be a part of this community. John and I have been coming out here quite a bit. This is probably my 4th time in the past 3 months, and it's just a real pleasure. I want to tell you all a little bit about who I am, though, and why I'm running. And then we can move on to the man of the hour, to John. But essentially, I made Maryland my chosen home well over 20 years ago. I moved here for law school. And I pretty quickly fell in love with the city of Baltimore and all of its charms. And then with a young man named Michael and all of his charms. And now Michael and I have been married for a little over 18 years. We live in Baltimore County with our 2 teenage boys. And I've spent about 2 decades of my career as an advocate for women's rights on everything from physical safety to economic security to reproductive health. But as you can imagine, my story starts well before my time in public service. I grew up straddling 2 different worlds. My father is the son of a coal miner. He's a proud Army veteran from Ohio. But my mother was born and raised literally on the other side of the world in Iran. And that's actually where my parents met, where they married, had my brother, only coming back to the States for my dad to go to college on the GI Bill. And that's when I was born. When I was 2 months old, my dad had graduated. We packed everything up and moved back over to Iran, intending to put down permanent roots. But unfortunately, in the wake of the Iranian Revolution, it wasn't safe for us. And so my family had to flee our home. I'm incredibly grateful, though, that we were able to rebuild our lives back here in the States. Actually, once we came back to America, my mother was able to realize opportunities that she never would have had otherwise, going on to become a small business owner for all career. And it was she who instilled in me this radical idea that my value isn't limited by my gender, nor should it be. I grew up so keenly aware of how fragile my rights were, not just in Iran, but here in America as well. And so for me, this fight for women's rights, gender justice, equality, it's always been as fundamental as freedom, and something I've always known we could never take for granted. So fast forward a little bit to the late 2000s, I was a young associate at a law firm. I was on an accelerated partnership track when I had my first son, Braden. And I was one of the lucky ones. I had paid family leave. But when I got back from that leave, I found out I was taken off a partnership track, denied my bonus that year, sidelined in pretty much every opportunity I had. Essentially, my bosses were very clear to me that they wanted me to know I could not have that career and family at the same time. And so it's experiences like those that I keep first and foremost with me when I've been advocating for women across the state. Because frankly, I know that issues like discrimination in the workforce, the gender pay gap, lack of family care or child care, those are happening all over the state to Marylanders every day. And frankly, happening the most to those who can afford it the least. But those are the issues that I'm willing to take on. Whether it was as an assistant attorney general for the state of Maryland, as board president, like Jared said, board president of Planned Parenthood of Maryland, or in my current role as the executive director of the Women's Law Center of Maryland. I've never shied away from a tough fight. In fact, I've been on the front lines, fighting and advocating, helping to pass paid earned safe and sick leave, a fight for 15, and now finally this year, paid family leave. Like every day at the Women's Law Center, I see folks coming in, and they are all coming to us in need of an emergency attorney for a domestic violence situation. That's what we do. But they're all also coming to us with a host of other issues. Many of them need affordable housing. Most of them need affordable childcare. And every single one of them needs economic dignity. And so the work that I do every day really highlights how important it is that our government take a holistic approach to the challenges facing Marylanders. I'll be honest, I didn't think there was anyone in the campaign that was thinking about those family issues that are so important to me, let alone building a policy around them, until I met John. But he has a proven track record of supporting equity in our workforce, equity in our healthcare system, equity in our education system. He has shown up every day and will continue to show up every day for every Marylander. Now, as a working mom trying to juggle career and now a campaign and my kids, and as a member of the sandwich generation, my mother recently having some significant health issues, I know all too well the crisis of care
that we're facing. And so when John actually came to me and asked me to be his running mate, I had a lot to consider. My mom's health, my children growing up, and all of those things. And yet, I truly and fundamentally believe that running for office is an act of service. So if I can be a part of lifting up these issues, or maybe a part of the solution to those issues, then who am I to say no? That's why I'm so proud to be running for Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. This chance to turn that promise of progress for better, brighter, more prosperous Maryland into that transformational change we deserve. Because we deserve that equity in our healthcare system. We deserve the equity in our education system, and we definitely deserve it in our workforce. So I come here today grateful for the support of the Lower Shore Progressive Group, but asking you all, not just for your support, but really to join our movement. Because that's the way that we're going to get the better, more prosperous and just. Thank you all very much. We're going to get there with the right leader for right now. And I'm not sure actually of our order, Jared, so I don't know if John is next.
No, I messed up the order.
That's okay. But it will be right with the right leader for right now, who will be John. Give your next step. Thank you all very much.
So as you all heard, the delegate candidate's time has come. We've seen attacks on women's rights. We've seen the attack on abortion rights. If there's anyone that has experience doing that, it's definitely her. But however, she can't do it alone. We need folks in the state Senate that will work with Michelle and John. That's why I'm proud to introduce our next candidate, Salisbury City Councilwoman, longtime LSPC member, and someone that I've known forever, Michelle Gregory.
Hey guys, I'm so glad to be here with you all. So I want to start with a little story about how this became an organization that works on the Lower Shore. After Trump was elected, there was a rally in Salisbury about the ban on Muslims coming into the country and building a wall. And so there was a rally in downtown Salisbury against that. And the scrappy looking teenager comes up to me with a clipboard and says, hey, we're starting a group to get together to organize. You want to sign up? I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. So I put my hand, just marked the calendar, on my phone, said when the first meeting was. And I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out. And I get there. It's a group of young guys, 4 young dudes running this group, and they had some knowledge about the political side of things, but I very quickly realized they didn't have any practical application on how to reach people, how to organize. And being a small business owner, and let's face it, I'm kind of a geek, a nerd. I said, oh, well, do we have a website? Do you have a Facebook page? No, I don't know how to do that. Do you know how to do that? I don't know. Okay, fine, I'll do this. I'll take care of it. And that quickly snowballed into being a part of the leadership team of LSPC, running the communications, running the Facebook, running the website, doing all the things to reach the community online. And as it progressed, we started in the beginning of 2017. 2018 rolled around and it was election season. And it was our first year. We'd only been an organization for a year, and there were so many growing pains, so many organizational hurdles to get over. Infighting, there were multiple groups cropping up all at the same time. It was trying to coordinate with other people. And I really quickly realized, just like I realized that these guys didn't have the skills to do things that I knew how to do, I quickly realized we didn't have a lot of candidates locally running at the local level to vote for. There just were none. And so I said, okay, well, fine. I guess I'll do it. And this became that was how I began to run for Central Committee. And because we went out and door knocked, suddenly an election that nobody had ever even paid attention to in Wycomico County, nobody knew what the Central Committee did. You talk to somebody like, I don't know what the Central Committee is, I don't know what they do. And I ended up being the top vote getter because we organized. We went out, we knocked doors, we reached the community, and we organized. Which is that, because that's what we do. And I applied those same things to the Central Committee. And that year, we managed to flip 2 county council seats in Wycomico County. And we managed to run a whole host of local candidates at the local level to get the vote out. But it wasn't perfect. There were some races that were lost, some we gained. And when an opening came up on city council, I was the chair of the Central Committee. I had to find somebody to run for it. So I started recruiting. And everybody's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. Because I happen to be in the district. I guess I'm going to do this. And so I ran for city council and I did the same thing I did for the Central Committee and for other candidates that were running for office. And I knocked doors and we organized. And when it came down to it, I won with 77% of the vote. So organizing works, guys. And I want to go back to 2018. In 2018, we lost a state senator who absolutely did his best for the area with the resources he was given. He tried his hardest. But in a district like this, we have to all hands on deck and work together. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of coordination between campaigns. There was not a lot of coordination up and down the ballot. People didn't want to associate with our gubernatorial candidate. People didn't want to associate with the down ballot candidates, whatever. So we lost the seat by 2,500 votes. I want to explain how that broke down to you. It was 300 votes positive for Senator Mathias in Wycomico County, which is only about half the county, only about half the counties in the district. He won by, I think it was 5 votes in Somerset County and lost by 2,500 votes in his own backyard in Ocean City. That's where the loss was. So when I began recruiting for this seat, I was asking people who lived in areas other than Ocean City, who could bring their communities out for the election, communities that hadn't ordinarily participated. And I went to people all over, and I kept hearing, oh, well, we just thought it was going to go uncontested. We just thought nobody was going to run. So last year, I sat down with my family, and I said, look, guys, we have an opportunity here to do something big. And they supported me in this decision. And I said, I guess I'm going to do this. And for the past year, we've been organizing. And I'm not going to lie to you, it is not easy. A race like this is not easy. But that's why we have to have organizations like this one that are full of people who can do a little bit of work, each of them, because that adds up to a lot of work done. So I'm coming to you guys saying that if we organize, we will win and elect every single candidate that is spoken today, up and down the ballot. We have Team 38, me and Todd, we're in this together, we're a buddy system, we are working together 100%. In fact, I dragged him along for the ride. What's wrong? So, I want you guys to understand that it is so incredibly important to see you guys showing up here today. Because when we show up, when we do things like knock doors, when we donate $5, $10, $15, let me tell you something, every dollar you donate is a door knocked. That's another piece of lit in someone's hands that tells them about the candidates that you're working for, that you're working to elect, who are going to work for you. Because that's what we need. We currently have a delegation in this district that does not work for us. They don't. I don't even know who they work for. Themselves, maybe? I don't know. For the fun of it, I don't know. But I know they're not working for us because they're entering bills like he said, Sunday hunting. Like that's the biggest concern we have down here. When we don't have clean drinking water. We have babies who can't go to doctors. We have families going hungry. Elderly people who cannot find a place to live that's affordable. These are real issues that are facing people in this district every single day, but they're worried about Sunday hunting. Oh, but I also should add, the other things that they entered were an anti-education bill like you see cropping up in all of these other states. And a bill to restrict the reproductive rights of underage girls. Underage girls who need reproductive health care. They were trying to restrict their ability to get that care. And let's not even get into the gun issue. Because we have a delegation right now that does not care that our babies are getting shot up. They do not care. These are well-funded candidates who get a lot of money from a lot of sources. And none of them are good. So who do they work for? We need people who work for us. Absolutely, unequivocally for us. We need people from within the community who know the struggle, who've been there, who have experienced the struggle, or have watched their friends and family have that struggle. I am tired, I don't know about you, but I am tired of being represented by people who don't actually represent who we are as a region. So I'm fired up, if you can't tell. We need to bring this kind of energy out every Saturday, knocking doors, donating up and down the ballot, telling our friends, our family, are you registered? Is your voter registration up to date? Asking your neighbor that just moved in, hey, by the way, here's the QR code to take you right to the voter registration, to update your voter registration. Let's get you updated so you can get out there and vote, both in the primary for a lot of the great candidates and in the general for all of these candidates again. Because we need people to show up. When we show up, we win. Plain and simple. So I really appreciate seeing everybody out here supporting this organization tonight. This has been the biggest roller coaster ride ever since from the founding of this organization. And I am so glad that it has brought all of you guys into my life. And I really appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you very much.
Not only do we need good state senate leaders like Todd and Michelle, we need a governor who is not going to let the Eastern Shore continue to stay behind. Someone who's willing to come down here on Memorial Day weekend, survive the traffic, and come speak with us directly right here in Somerset County, where we need the representation the most. I'm willing to bet the next speaker is going to be an Eastern Shore governor, someone who finally delivers for us after years and years and years of the status quo. It is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend and the next governor of the state of Maryland, John King.
Thank you so much, Jared. Can we have a round of applause for Jared and Lower Shore? It's grateful to have this time with you all. I'm grateful to be back in Princess Anne. Last time I was here was for an honorary degree at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which they were kind enough to give to me in part to celebrate my family history. My grandmother graduated from University of Maryland Eastern Shore in 1894. She's one of the first graduates of what was then Princess Anne Academy. And so I feel deeply connected to Princess Anne. I'm glad to be back. What I want to do is share a little bit about why I'm running for governor and what I'm hoping to accomplish. So look, my journey to running for governor is really grounded in the same values and experiences that led me to become a teacher at the start of my career. When I was a kid growing up, both my parents were educators. My mom was a teacher and school counselor. My dad was a teacher and administrator. They both passed away when I was little. My mom when I was 8, and my dad when I was 12. And in the period when it was just my dad and me, my dad was struggling with Alzheimer's. So home was incredibly difficult. I didn't know what my father would be like from one night to the next. Some nights he'd talk to me, some nights he wouldn't say a word. Some nights he'd be sad, other nights angry and then violent. The thing that saved me was school. School was the one place in my life that was safe and consistent and nurturing. And I was blessed to have a series of public school teachers who made school the one place where I could be a kid when I wasn't able to be a kid at home. I remember the things we did in 4th, 5th, 6th grade like it was yesterday, reading the New York Times every day, still do, doing productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream, Shakespeare in elementary school, doing a production of Alice in Wonderland where I was the rose with big red felt petals sticking out of my head. And I remember those things so clearly because school was my safe haven. After my dad passed, I moved around different family members, different schools, and I struggled the way a lot of young people who've experienced trauma struggle. I got in a lot of trouble. Actually, the first United States Secretary of Education had been kicked out of high school, but I was very lucky that there were teachers and a school counselor and family members who were willing to give me a second chance, who were willing to see me as more than the sum of my mistakes. And because of their investment in me, I became a teacher to try to do for other kids what teachers had done for me. As a high school social studies teacher, as a middle school principal, led schools at the local level and state level before coming to work for President Obama, first as Deputy Secretary of Education and then as Secretary of Education. Huge, sprawling responsibility, 50 million kids in our K-12 schools, more than 20 million students in our higher ed institutions, a budget $15 billion bigger than the budget of the state of Maryland. And when the administration ended, I wanted to continue my focus on issues of equity, equity for low-income students, for students of color, for English learners, for rural students, the students who often get forgotten and left behind. And so I took over an education civil rights organization called the Education Trust, where we work on equity issues in early childhood, K-12 and higher ed. But as an educator, you see how all the other systems impact kids and families, whether or not they have safe and affordable housing, whether or not they're food insecure, whether or not their families have health care. And so when COVID hit, I could see the disproportionate impact COVID was having on low-income communities and communities of color in Maryland, I started an advocacy organization called Strong Future Maryland, a progressive advocacy organization, to work on making our recovery from COVID an equitable one, to make the argument that's not good enough to just try to get back to February 2020, but that this should be a New Deal moment where we take on our deeper systemic challenges. And that work, working with legislators and advocates, convinced me that the next governor of Maryland will be uniquely positioned to make government a force for good in people's lives, the way schools were such a powerful force for good in my life. So I decided to run. And the case that we're making is that what we've been doing as a state is not enough. That our current leadership, that our, not just our Republican governor, but let's face it, we've had Democratic majorities in the General Assembly for 30 years. And what's been delivered? Not enough. The fact that we passed the blueprint for Maryland's future to invest in K-12, but we still don't have universal affordable childcare in Maryland? Not enough. The fact that we have hundreds of thousands of Marylanders who are without health care, hundreds of thousands of more who are crushed by healthcare costs they can't afford, hundreds of thousands of others who can't find a specialist or providers in their community, not enough. The fact that the General Assembly just passed a climate bill that doesn't meet the moment, it doesn't really move us towards renewable energy, not enough. The fact that the General Assembly buried a bill that would have guaranteed gender affirming care for transgender Marylanders, not enough. The reality is, that's right. The reality is our leadership has not been doing enough to improve the everyday quality of life for Marylanders, and that's especially true on the Eastern Shore. And so what we're arguing is we need a different vision, a vision that is about an economy that works for everyone, a vision that is about a society that provides opportunity for all, a vision that's grounded in the idea that education is the foundation of the health of our economy and our democracy. We need great schools in every community in the state. We can't leave any schools behind. We have to make sure that we're getting the resources to schools. We have to defend teaching the truth about our history. We have to make sure that our schools are safe communities for all of our kids, including our LGBTQ kids. And we have to make sure that we build on top of the blueprint for Maryland's future by investing in early childhood, universal childcare, birth through 5, but also investing in our higher education institutions. We should be investing much more in our community colleges and our public colleges and our historically Black colleges and universities that are engines of social mobility. We are offering a vision that's about economic dignity. Look, we all know when we see Jeff Bezos launch himself into space in his personal rocket ship, that our economy is not organized in a way that produces shared prosperity. If we are serious about an economy that produces prosperity for all, we need to invest in the supply of housing that folks can afford. We need to truly treat healthcare as a human right. We need to implement paid family leave. The General Assembly just passed a paid family leave law, but it's up to the next governor to actually make it happen, and we will. Right? If we're serious about economic dignity, we have to invest in public transportation. That means rail in many parts of the state, and other parts of the state, that means buses that are on time, reliable, and frequent. It means making sure that every community has access to a supermarket and to a hospital and other healthcare providers. That's what economic dignity looks like. It also means that we need economic development that invests in the Eastern Shore. We of course, we need to invest in the green economy. And that means here investing in offshore wind, but it also means investing in solar. Investing in small farms. It means investing in Main Street economic development. Earlier this morning, Michelle and I were walking through Princess Anne. There's tremendous opportunity here. We've got to attract businesses here. We got to make it easier for folks to choose to live on the shore. We got to make sure there's reliable internet access everywhere. Alongside education and economic dignity, we also believe that the environment is an existential crisis for us. The reality is the consequences of climate change are being experienced today, right now. We see it in flooding in Baltimore and Annapolis and Ellicott City and Howard County. We see it in farmers on the Eastern Shore who are today losing farmland to saltwater intrusion. Right, we can't wait 50 years for climate action. We need now to move towards building standards and transportation policy that will get us to a renewable energy economy. We also desperately need environmental protection. Governor Hogan has starved the Department of Environment of resources, and that is allowing companies to pour pollutants into the Chesapeake. That is a threat to our health. It's a threat to our well-being. Water quality is an environmental protection issue. When Todd was sharing earlier about how when he was a student at UMES, there was a drink that they had that was called Princess Anne water, right? Because it had orange flakes in it, because it didn't look clear, right? That's a problem, right? That illustrates a problem. No one should be without clean water and clean air. Those are human rights. And so ultimately, now I'll close on this point. Ultimately, as we tackle education and economic dignity and the environment, we have to do it all with a racial justice lens. And I don't have to tell you, you understand the history in this community and throughout our state. We have fallen short as a state on racial justice. We have the highest rate of incarceration of young Black men in the country, higher than Mississippi, higher than Alabama. We've fallen short. And so I know we have to center racial justice. I know that as a matter of lived experience. I know that as a matter of principle. And I also know that because I have a deep personal appreciation for our state's history around issues of race. I live in Silver Spring in Montgomery County, about 25 miles from where my great-grandfather was enslaved in Gaithersburg, Maryland. The property where my great-grandfather was enslaved still owned by the family that are direct line descendants of the family that enslaved me. And they've maintained the property exactly as it was in the 1860s. Same main house that was built in the 1700s, and the cabin that my great-grandfather and his family lived in as enslaved people is still standing on the property. So I've been able with my wife and my daughters, for 18 and 15, to stand inside of that cabin. And when I do, I contemplate really two things. One, the intense intimacy and cruelty of the institution of slavery. That cabin is not 30 feet from the main house. These were two families living in the same physical space, one owning the other. And so many of our challenges as a state and as a country, frankly, are tied to that history of slavery, of segregation, of redlining. What happened in Buffalo is tied to the history of white supremacy in the country. But that's real, that's truth, that happened. But the other thing I contemplate standing inside of that cabin is how profound it is that my family went in 3 generations from enslaved in that cabin to serving in the cabinet of the first Black president. And that story, that journey, the journey that Michelle's family has made, that journey should be possible everywhere in the state of Maryland. And so that's ultimately what this campaign is about, delivering an opportunity for all Marylanders, regardless of race, regardless of the language they speak at home, regardless of immigration status, regardless of the part of the state they live in. We deserve opportunity for all in Maryland, and that's what Michelle and I will deliver as your next governor and lieutenant governor. Thank you so much. Woo!
Before I hand it over to our comms director for closing remarks and get you on to the meeting greet that I know you all definitely want to have, I want to highlight one thing for you all. So new polling came out in the governor's race. You'll see those flyers behind you. This race is winnable. John is 1 point, pretty much tied for first place with 27% of the vote undecided. Somerset County is going to decide this primary, who's going to be our next governor. We'll come with Worcester County, the rest of the Eastern Shore is going to decide who our next governor will be. Sure, it's a man and woman who has shown up, who has the policies and the experience to help us here on the shore. John King and Michelle City. That said, before closing remarks, I do want to thank quite a few people. I want to thank Wendy, Tyler, Ryan, and everyone else in the LSPC leadership for helping us get today's event set up. I want to thank let's let me Jed Bush who I haven't begged to claps. I want to thank my mother, Pamela, and my girlfriend Logan for always being supportive of my political ambitions. I know that's not always. That said, I'm going to go ahead and thank all the candidates and all of you for showing up. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to our comms director, Wendy.
So I hope that you all are pumped up. I am certainly pumped up. You know what my next task is going to be? Let's get to work. So, right, work. So if you're interested in working, I have an opportunity for you, Thursday night, monthly meeting for Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. It's gonna be a text banking party, absolutely. It's not our first, it will not be our last. I hope to see you all there. We got a couple other upcoming events going on. I think we're gonna be at Pride in Salisbury on the 25th of June and Juneteenth on the 18th of June, again in Salisbury. So we'll see you there. And with that said, I think that's everything. Oh, I'm sorry, if you would like to join, please visit our website or moveon.com, Lower Shore Progressive Caucus. Just like Michelle said, every dollar is another piece of wood in somebody's hand. That's what we need. Thank you again.
Candidates, you can hang around now. You have an opportunity to actually meet the candidates individually, but the part of the rally is over. So if candidates fun hanging around for a bit, talking to these fine people. But yeah, rally's done. Woo. Woo.